Okay. I can't really tell if that's hitting the screen.
Are you Kim?
I am Kim. Yes.
I'm Mary. Nice to meet you.
Hey, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, thanks for coming to the chat.
Yes, I've done a few trips. I bought my first set of pillows because I'm rehabbing it.
Where are you from?
Western Mass.
Oh, cool.
Up in the Berkshires.
So you got a lot of good travels.
Yes. I'll be crewing a friend of mine who's doing her first fundraiser.
That's right. Which race?
The Berkshire Badass. It's in Windsor, Mass.
Okay.
It's a ski resort, cross country ski resort, Knoxville.
Very cool.
Yeah.
When is that race?
Second weekend in July. So we're gonna
Summer race.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You got poles ready?
Yep.
You can poke your runner.
Yeah.
I'm friends with Dina Griffin. So
yes.
Nicole, nice to meet you.
Yeah, she told me.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks.
I did with her for Tahoe 200 several years ago, and then we become good friends. Yeah.
It's hard not to be good friends.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Thanks for coming to the
Of
chat.
course. Yeah. Do you need to plant any questions with us or anything?
Ask away. Yeah. Yeah, don't be shy.
All right.
Cool.
Friends with him. He chats with me all the time. He's an older brother.
Zurich.
Yes. I met Amy. They live in New Jersey now. They moved over there.
Where did they live?
Over I don't know. Somewhere overseas. But he'll chat. Hey, how you doing? Sure, how you doing? It's so funny. I said, are you and Amy coming to Boston? No. Amy goes, we didn't ask him to speak this year.
It'll be interesting after this year to see what they do. It's so hard because I know because the last 2 years I was in the same place and I was just running. But again, I can't think of a better venue for you to have the outdoor stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I've been walking around, I just got to walk out. So tomorrow I'll go in and
I was going to say, are there any particular, you already talked to one particular right?
yeah. You know, this is also the thing about it. This isn't like necessarily a lot of the things I typically go to trade shows.
I see.
This is expos. So, but it's still fun to kind of see what's also like, so, here's me. I got my glasses on. Let's see this. Well, just to, to see. But everybody's like, the free stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still fun.
Yeah. It's just interesting as well. The other thing is it really depends who shows up to which vendors pay to be.
I mean, it's being sponsored.
All right, everybody, thank you for staying with us for one more round, one more interview here on the Skills Spotlight stage at the Boston Outdoor Expo and the Boston Run Show. We're talking with Kim Levinsky next. I can't wait to have this conversation because we're both avid trail runners and found out that we have a lot to talk about. Kim has been at the helm of the Sassquad trail running crew since their first trail party back in 2018. Sassquad hosts 10 trail parties throughout New Jersey and New York, and their mission is to welcome all people, all paces, and all ages to their events. Since that inaugural race, Kim has directed 70 events, ranging in distances from 5Ks up to 150 miles. Kim recently set the fastest known time on the New York Long Path in 9.5 days. 9.5 days, becoming the first woman to complete all 358 miles in a single push. So we had a 200 miler up here earlier. Kim's a 358 miler. So everyone, please welcome to the stage with me, Kim Levinsky. All right. So you guys are going to see that I have some notes here, but they'll probably get thrown out pretty quick. But the whole point of the actual motto, right, for this conversation is, you know, how to get engaged in trail running, and maybe you haven't done it before. The things that you want to know about, how do you get into trail running? So Kim, why don't you talk a little bit about like that? How did you get into trail running, and then how do other people get into trail running? If it feels intimidating or if it feels like something that they're not sure they want to do just yet.
Yeah, I think like a lot of other people, I started as a roadie. So is anyone here a road runner? A lot of roadies in the crowd. I always say you got to cross over to the dark side of trail running. So, I mean, basically the way you get into it is to just go out and try it. So you'll find there's a little bit of a different vibe at trail races. Our events, we call them trail parties because we want everybody to feel welcome, but you'll often find that trail runners like to chat and they'll strike up conversation where roadies might be a little bit more standoffish. But
yeah, we're a very social crowd. If you like social crowds, you'll like trail running.
Exactly. And Dave and I were talking the other day about this chat and how one of the big drawing points is snacks, right? Like you guys.
Yes. Food, beer, talk. It's trail running.
Yeah, the snacks will draw you in. You don't have to do gels if you don't want to. You can do pierogies, bacon, cheeseburgers, really, you name it. You could probably find it in a trail race.
Baked potato.
Baked potato.
All of the above.
Really, potato is its own food group in trail races.
Sweet potato.
Yeah, oh yeah, sweet potato. Here's a health-conscious potato eater. Yeah, every once in a while we'll mix a sweet potato in there too. I found a life hack, tomato juice, right? It's like the healthy Gatorade. Anybody, it's like has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but tomato juice in like the middle of a race, or like if you're at a checkpoint some like 15, 16 miles in, it's like seriously, if kids like tomato juice, there'd be no need for Gatorade. So that's part of our snacks conversation. But so, okay, number one question people have when they get trail running: what if I fall?
I know, I hear that a lot from hikers who are thinking about trying trail running or roadies, and sometimes it happens. Sometimes you do fall on the trails. I always encourage people that you do not have to run in trail running. That's like the big secret. You don't have to run. You can come out and you can hike. Our events, we have very generous cutoff time, so you won't feel pressured to finish in a certain amount of time. But if you are worried about falling, just slow down a bit. I was just talking with this lady in the crowd. We're talking about hiking poles. That's another great way that you can stay upright. They help with balance. I love poles. I use them all the time. So that's a way you can avoid falling.
Yeah, and I don't mean to sound contrarian, but another way to not be afraid of falling anymore is to fall. Like, it's okay. You can fall. Like, your human body is going to tuck. It's going to protect its most vital assets, like your brain and your heart. And you're going to notice when you fall hiking, or even when you fall running, your body's doing a thing that your brain isn't doing consciously. Like, you will not. The thing you're fearing the most isn't going to happen. So fall. It's okay. And once you fall once, you're going to know, oh, I fell. Like, yeah, I scraped my knee and it hurt. I have a headache now. But it's kind of part of trail running. I don't know. I always thought it was just part of the job.
It's true. And I say, too, the mark of a good friend, a good trail running friend, is they take a picture of you on the ground before they help you up. So
somebody must have a phone. You need it documented. It's definitely. All right, so the number one question was, what if I fall? The number two question is, the woods are scary. What do you do if you, like, are you scared to go in the woods by yourself? Like, have you gone in the woods by yourself and felt scared? How did you overcome that?
That is such a common question, and especially with females that I talk to, there's definitely a fear of being out in the woods. And for people who are doing an ultra marathon, maybe the first time, going overnight can be a scary thing, running in the woods. And just know that's normal. It's totally normal to feel a little bit uncomfortable or nervous, apprehensive. I always say, if you can go out with a friend, you don't have to go alone, especially if you're trying night running for the first time. Grab a buddy and then work yourself up to going out for, even if it's 10 minutes by yourself. to try it by, get a little bit more comfortable on the trails.
Is anybody here a night trail runner?
I did
Did one? Okay, yeah. It's really great. Is one way back there? All right, yes, night trail runner, let's go. Headlamps are your friend. They make them in super bright lumens now too, so you can probably find a headlamp that'll light up your entire 180-degree periphery, which is actually a really good segment into gear. Right? Like what gear does a road runner have that's not going to work in the trail, and what gear do road runners need if they want to be successful in the trail?
I always tell people you do not have to go out and buy a $180 trail shoe in order to try trail running. Go out with your road shoes and see if you like it first before you start investing gear. Because it's very easy to walk into any running store and drop several $100s. So you don't need to spend all that money. Go out and try it. And then if you do enjoy it, trail shoes will help you. You've got different treads on the bottom. You're going to have, these things are called lugs, which are going to be a little bit more aggressive than a road shoe. So if you look down your road shoe, there's probably not much traction underneath. Trail shoe will help you feel a little bit more comfortable, but don't feel like you have to go out and buy them right away. Try it first.
Yeah, you can get away with that on most trails. If your road runners though are like super beat, and you want to just get like a pair of cheaper road runners or even a pair of cheaper trail runners, like it doesn't have to be a costly thing, right? We don't want price to be an obstacle to exploring outdoors. But if your lugs are like not there at all, like maybe get a new pair of shoes. But it doesn't have to be an expensive pair of shoes. So a lot of people have a debate about like hydration vests or the waist vests, like what waist packs. What do you prefer, and how mandatory is it? Or I guess another question is, a lot of people won't carry one if they're going only a certain distance, right? What's your distance where you're like, I have to have a hydration vest, or I have to have storage for extra gear? Like, because that's not really a road running thing, right? Like most road races, people don't have that. So can you talk more about that? Like tell people, like, what do you prefer? How do you do it?
I tell people do what you're comfortable with. So if you're coming from the road scene, and most road runners will run with a belt, start with that. Bring that out on the trail. See how many snacks you can stuff in there. But you'll probably find that you're going to want to transition eventually to more of a vest style, because there's so many pockets in a running vest and different ways to carry water. With a vest, you're going to have more capacity with a bladder in the back. That's like the big pouch. And then you can put bottles in the front, fill the sides with snacks. So I personally like vests. I don't like to hold bottles. I don't like a waist belt, but I do like the vest because you can fit a lot more in there.
And if anyone else is keeping track, we've said snacks now like 30 times. So remember, trail running is all about snacks and community, and that's like gear second. Snacks, community first. Trying to think, we talked about other, like, dispelling the myths of trail running. So we talked about the community, right? Community's great. We talked about not having to be the fastest person on the planet. Were there any other ones that we wanted to dispel? What did I miss?
Yeah, I think something we can talk about is safety out on the trails. That's something we really like to hone in on at Sassquad. We have a lot of new people who are coming out to our events, so I always say that's one of the best things you can do is before you go out, take a second to figure out where you're going. I've met so many people out on the trails who, I live in the greater New York City area, so sometimes people wander the trails and they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing the loop, right? I'm like, what loop? Where are you going? And they're like, I don't know. I said, where do you park? I don't know. So you want to try to avoid getting in those situations. As silly as it sounds, take a picture of where you parked. A lot of the phones now have the GPS on your photos that'll tag it. So also go online. Google can be your friend. There's a lot of different apps that you can use, such as Gaia, All Trails is one, and map out where you're going to go ahead of time. And the number one important thing is to tell somebody where you're going. That's great practice for road running, but especially on the trails. Let a friend know, say, hey, I'm going out to the trail in West Orange, New Jersey. I think I'm going to be out for 2 hours. If you don't hear from me in 3 hours, something's wrong. So really important to think about safety.
Yeah, and I think to echo that comment too, I was just having this conversation with somebody who was out hiking for the very first time, and they asked, like, how do you prepare? Like, everyone has apps, right? And the apps are great, but like, what if the app didn't exist? What would you need to do? And Kim's 100% right about telling somebody who's not with you where you're going. And then another thing that's important about that is tell them which direction you're going. Right? It's like, say hypothetically you're doing a 10-mile loop. Well, which way did you start? Because if it's 3 miles in, you're hurt, and no one knows which way to look, you could have gone clockwise or counterclockwise, and that 3 miles is 7 miles, and they're going to get to you a lot slower. So tell someone who's not with you where you're going, and tell them which way you're going. That's point number 2. So that's physical safety, right? One other thing we talked about when we talked before this was kind of like mental health. And one of the differences, this is what I forgot, one of the differences that we think about trail running and road running, and a couple other people have actually talked about this in other points today. For road running, you're sort of like point A to point B, right? Maybe there's a pace goal in mind. Maybe it's not a pace goal, but you just know all I have to do is I hit that start line and I hit that finish line, or I'm running 5 miles and I have to get to 5 miles, and that's it. Trail running is not really like that, and trail running and people who end up doing trail running for a longer period of time, which we must talk about, it's kind of like mental health. It kind of like supports your ability to just get out, be in the woods, be in nature, and like zone a little bit. And I'm just curious for you to talk about how that's affected you, because we were both like, yeah, that's why I love trail running more than road running.
Yeah, definitely. I think, speaking from somebody who's from New Jersey, a very busy area with roads and drivers who aren't necessarily paying attention all the time, it's nice to be out on the dirt where you don't have to kind of run defensively. I felt like that as a road runner. You had to be defensive and really keep your eyes on a swivel at all times so you didn't go splat. So on the trails, it's nice to be out in nature, and man, I mean, I can't say enough about the mental health aspects of running out on the trails. I mean, just the peace and the solitude that you'll find out there, if that's what you want. If you're looking for more of a community, you'll find once you dip your toes into the trail scene, you're going to be surrounded by some really cool and sometimes weird people. But I think we're a pretty good group. But yeah, I'd say like the mental health side of it, with just getting plugged in, with getting out of your busy lives. I think we're going 1,000,000 miles an hour. I mean, honestly, I'm thinking right now, like, where's the nearest trail that I can go to after this? Because this is bananas in this convention center right here.
Yeah, have you ever, this is like a completely off the cuff question, have you ever figured something out while trail running?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, I figure stuff out. Like in my life, like in my real actual life, I will go and just run, and I'll figure that thing out. I don't want to speak for everybody, because obviously I can't. I've never had that happen on a road run. Not once in my life has that happened on a road run, but on a trail run, I figure stuff out. My brain is somewhere else. So if you haven't done that before, and it's a good way to really give yourself that solitude, and it's problem solving in a way that, like, you're still focused on the trail. It's almost happening behind the scenes. I don't know, I've never had that anywhere else than trail running or hiking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things I found out while trail running is that trail running can't solve all your problems.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
That's not true. You just go, right? That's all you do.
Yeah. The further, I could say I ran 360 miles. That didn't solve all the problems.
That was my next question. You just took my question. So running 360 miles didn't solve all your problems?
Did not solve all the problems. There's a lot of clarity that came from it, for sure.
So we should talk about that. And I know we want to save time for Q&A. I hope everyone's okay with this, just kind of hanging out and talking here. But 360 miles. So there's a lot of routes that are popular that you can name off the top of your head. I have to admit, I wasn't aware, right? And we were talking, I was like, wow, like my eyes jumped out of my head up the Zoom. I'm like, is that really a thing? So can you start from the beginning? Like, how did you decide you wanted to do it? How did you get ready to do it? Who supported you? How did they support you? Like, tell your story, because she didn't only run 360 miles, she got the fastest known time on the route, right? That's like, you didn't just do it, you did it better than everyone else. So tell us how.
Yeah, so the New York Long Path, it starts in Albany, New York, and it traverses about 360 miles down to Manhattan. So it's not a straight shot, obviously. It goes a little bit wonky around the state, but it goes through some of the most incredibly diverse trails of New York State. 90 miles goes through the Catskills. Is anyone familiar with the Catskills in New York? So pretty gnarly terrain. It goes on the Devil's Path, the Escarpment Trail, the Burroughs Range. Just in that section alone, 90 miles, there is about 22,000 feet of elevation gain. But it goes through the Gunks of New York, which is very popular for rock climbing. And then it ends by going on the Palisades, where you're running along the Hudson River, and you finish by running over the George Washington Bridge, which is quite the experience of being in the woods for 9.5 days, and then you're in New York City. It was pretty wild, and we had people who were they didn't know why we were celebrating at the subway station. They started taking pictures, like wondering what was going on. But yeah, the FKT, it was an incredible experience. I had about 25 friends come out to support. We rented an RV, and I got to sleep a few hours each night, but it's on trail for 16 to 20 hours per day. This happened in 2023, so if you remember the storms that came through and demolished Vermont, and that was the week of the FKT, so we had some challenges along the way.
Yeah, so that's a big, you got the FKT with half of Connecticut, most of the side of Vermont, the whole Connecticut River Valley being flooded out. So how'd you get around it? What'd you end up doing?
Yeah, that was the big drama of the FKT. Was a few days into it, we got word that Harriman State Park was closed because of the trail damage. So that meant that we were in limbo, thinking, well, this is going to end at mile 280 or so, and we were just making plans like, I guess we'll celebrate at the start of Harriman where it's closed. And then we found out a couple days later that the park was going to give us special permission to go through. So me and my friend who was pacing, we were the only ones in Harriman State Park, and we found out why it was closed. It was wild. It was just flooded everywhere. We were shimmying across logs to get across there. It was nuts. But I can't drive home the point enough that it was a team effort from start to finish. There's no way I would have even gotten through the first day without the crew and pacers that were there. I ran the first 15 miles by myself, but the rest of the time, friends were out there with me till 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. But I think that's a really cool part about trail running. There aren't a lot of road experiences where you'd find that. So yeah, the long path was kind of crazy.
Was it your goal to set the FKT from the beginning, or did that just happen?
Yeah, so I had a friend who he set the initial FKT a few years ago, Ken Posner, and he pitched the idea and said, hey, there's never been a woman to attempt doing this FKT. You should do it. And it didn't take much prodding. I opened up the map, I'm like, oh my God.
That's like the meme, that's a horrible idea. What time?
We ride at dawn.
Oh man, I just said that and then I blanked on the next thing I was going to ask you. But it still had to do with this. Let's see. Oh, I know. What was the second longest run you've done up to that? Like, did you go from like a 200-mile run to this, or had you never even run 100? Like, what was your progression to 360 miles?
In 2022, I did the Tahoe 200 race. Yeah. Yep.
There's another guy up here, Scott Tadeo, who was talking about that today. Oh, nice.
Yeah, but
So-
I've never done a 5K. I've never done a 5K.
Never done a 5K.
Yeah, and I've never done a 100-miler that's sanctioned. So gotta put that on the bucket list.
360, 200, and then what?
100, but it was a DIY type of project. Yeah.
All right, so you have some good ultra distance experience. It wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna go do this thing, and you just figured it out. Like, how many years have you? Like, what was your first ultra distance run, and like, how did that end up progressing to 358?
Yeah, the first run was back in 2013 or 2014 was the first ultra, and then you can tell I've got a little bit of all-in personality, so kind of just went further and further and further. And this is a big part of my mental health journey. Was it really wasn't until the last few years where I talked about before, you figured out that running can't solve everything. So I think for a lot of years it was just, I'm going to go further, because it makes me feel good, and that worked until it didn't. So I got plugged in with therapy through the organization Bigger Than the Trail. They're a nonprofit that provides free therapy for anybody who needs it. So you don't have to be a runner in order to take advantage of that. So I got plugged in with therapy 2021, and that was a big shift in my running journey, where kind of the motivation changed.
Nice. Sorry, I was just thinking I'm still in denial that running can't solve all my problems. So we'll have to talk about the therapy thing afterwards, because I'm still like, no, the further I go, the better it is. It's all good. It's all good. But so I don't know if anybody else has anybody else heard this theme from a trail runner before? Because like, I'm always blown away when I meet people whose literal answers to questions are what my answers were. Like I started trail running by doing, like a 5-mile run, and then I did some crazy race I shouldn't have been in. And in that race, someone told me about the Pemi Loop, which is a 30-mile loop around the Pemi-Juwasa Wilderness, and then I did that, and then I kept going, and like, you always just end up trying to do more. Right? Like, this is another common theme in trail running. So anyone in the audience, has anyone never trail run, or are we all trail runners? You've never trail run? Okay. You're a hiker. So you will convert hiking to trail running, and you will keep, so that's what happens, right? You're like, oh, I can hike, I don't know, on a good day, 15 miles, right? But if I start running, I can go like 30 miles. Maybe I can go 40 miles, right? And you just keep going, because you just want to be out there longer. And so, yeah, I'm still in denial about the further I go, the better it gets me. I don't know, that was kind of a rant, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'll counter it. We'll balance it. We'll have balance. So with Sassquad, I always tell people that, especially my story, people hear like 360 miles. Oh my God, she's crazy. But I really believe that a 5K, you finish a 5K, you cross the finish line, it is just as special, just as big of an accomplishment as running 100 miles. And I truly believe that. That's my favorite part of race directing, is standing at the finish line and hearing people's stories about how this is their furthest they've ever run. They went out and did 3 miles. And I think it's just as incredible as somebody crossing the finish line and getting a belt buckle.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible part, like you said, about why you do what you do, is because that satisfaction. Anybody gets that satisfaction of that first whatever, right? It's just something to celebrate, and it's great to share in that celebration. I think we should probably open it up to Q&A. You got a few more minutes? Does anybody have any questions for Kim? I can stop talking and you guys can start talking. I'll bring around the mic, so please just give me 1 second. All right, I've done that too many times today. Does anybody have a question for Kim? Does anyone want to come pick this mic out?
What is something that you always carry with you in your vest when you go trail running? And so I have done endurance races, and when I'm in a down place, if you give me Wachusett sour cream and onion potato chips, I will get a smile on my face. So what is the food that brings you back to life? So I guess you choose water.
Okay, the first question, something that's always in my pack. I have a Garmin InReach, which is it's basically a mini satellite. Hikers are familiar with it. I always keep that in my pack no matter what. It's just a safety thing. A lot of times I do a lot of my running by myself or hiking by myself. So, for instance, like if you're in the Grand Canyon, you don't have cell service, I could still text that friend who knows where I am. This happened where it took longer than I thought. Shocker, in the Grand Canyon. And I sent her a text and say, hey, I'm going to be later than anticipated. And I could only do that because of the InReach. But that's always in my pack. Food, I can say on the long path, there was a moment where my friend gave me Nerd gummy clusters. And full transparency, I was crying in the moment. I was pretty low. And she said, eat this, you're going to feel better. And it did help.
Can I also chime in? Little Debbie's oatmeal cream pies. It's life-saving. Little Debbie's oatmeal cream pies. I'm not sponsored.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm a road runner, but how did you transition? Because road running, you can only start from the door of your house. Trail running, you have to plan. Road running, you can always start any time of the day from the door of your house. While trail running, you gotta have to plan it. And training for an ultra, which then I've done a few, but that's the only time I do trail running is I'm racing on an ultra. But most of the time I'm on the road training for it. So it's like the trail running, you have to plan ahead and of course spend some time or figure out when you're going to do it.
That's a great point, and I know a lot of trail runners run into that where the trails aren't necessarily super accessible. So we always say at Sassquad, don't let that hold you back from trying a trail race. You don't necessarily have to do all of your training on the trails. It certainly helps to get out on the trails. But in accessibility, that's just the reality of where a lot of people live, is you can't go out your door and have the Colorado mountains in the background. So, I mean, I'm a big proponent of strength training. I think that really helps to have the cross training build that endurability when you are going out on the trails, because it is different with road running is very linear. It's kind of the same motion over and over and over again. Trail running and hiking, it's a lot more varied terrain. So I think that's where strength training can come in and help. Another point, a lot of people will say, I want to do a mountain race, but I don't have mountains. You don't need mountains necessarily to train. You can, if you've got one hill that you have access to, you can use a treadmill up the incline, a stair mill, a garage, parking garage, if there's ramps or stairs. So it's kind of got to get a little bit creative.
Oh, yep, question right here.
All right, the raw truth here. How do you push through the most difficult parts of a race?
How do you push through the most difficult parts? I think that's evolved for me as well. I think initially, early on in ultra running, it was the mindset that you hear a lot of, like, you just gotta push through. You know, there's some guy that says, stay hard. You probably all know who that is. And I bought into that for a number of years. And again, it was one of those things where it worked until it didn't work. So I think that's tied into the mental health journey where, heads up. Good catch. See, that's because Dave's a trail runner. He has that agility.
It's all about those stabilizer muscles.
Yeah, but I think that's evolved for me as well, like, especially on the long path during the FKT, because there were a lot of swings with going low. And honestly, one of the best pieces of advice I got from a trail running friend a few years ago was, it's okay to cry if you need to cry. Honestly, I mean, some of these ultras you get pretty low, and to just the physical release that you can feel from letting out emotions, I mean, that's really great for real life as well. But honestly, a lot of it is just taking a deep breath. As simple as that sounds, is just a deep breath and then kind of composing yourself to move forward.
Any other questions for Kim?
Hi, I had a question about the feet. Doing multiple days or multiple loops for a long trail race. I mean, how do you keep your feet from getting destroyed?
That's a great question. There is a book called Fixing Your Feet. It's kind of referenced as the Trail Runner's Bible. It's a great read. It's got a lot of different, what's nice about it is it takes each issue that you might face on the trail and it provides a few different strategies of how to handle it. For example, like taping your feet with blisters. It'll give examples of, like, you can use gluco tape, which is like you could use KT tape. Some people don't tape at all. But the feet were a big issue on the long path because it rained so much throughout the 9.5 days. You know, we did the best that we could. I changed socks every time I came to the RV, so that was, I don't know, like 6 or 7 times a day. It was really, that was more the mental side of, like, oh, I have dry feet for 2 seconds, and then, you know, they just got wet. But one strategy I've heard with the wet feet is when you have a break in a race, like if you're at an aid station, you put hand sanitizer on the bottom of your feet, and that the alcohol content will draw out the moisture, so it'll kind of air out your feet a little bit. But, you know, there's only so much you can do when you're dealing with, like, say, it's a tropical storm and you're out there. But yeah, I'd recommend the book Fixing Your Feet. There's a lot of good info, and just talking to other people, other trail runners, to see what works. A lot of it's trial and error to find out, like, what works for you and what doesn't, because everybody's feet are very different. Like, some people might do better with taping, some people might do better with lube. It just depends.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as a follow-up to that, I learned that petroleum jelly, preventative maintenance, Vaseline on your feet, right away, socks. If it's a multi-day thing, every morning. It's more preventative because it prevents it's a friction barrier. It's not going to help if you're soaked, that's another story, but it's a friction barrier. So even in dry weather, if you're running really long distances or hiking really long distances, just having that barrier can be helpful for some people. I know it helped for me because I used to get really bad feet. Any other questions about feet or anything else? Are we sure? Oh my god. Oh, one more. Yes, please.
Since I would be a hiking converter into trail running, I love my backpack. It has all of my things, and I see trail runners and they have like nothing with them, and I go, "You go, girl! I can't do that." So, is how you mentioned like packing, but how would you suggest I convert from my backpack into trail running so I'm not top heavy and fall over? Because I've done that when I went too fast hiking. So, happy medium.
Yeah, I would say if you're already using a pack and you like it, it'd probably be an easy transition to try a hydration pack. Actually, here, I know there's at least one company, Oozway, over there that has packs. You don't have to go buy one, but you can try one on. Stores like, Run Specialty stores will have packs that you can try on, but some big box stores like REI will as well. I'd say just try it and see what you like. The packs, again, are so individual. It is a bit of trial and error, but it's going to be easy for you because you already use a pack with hiking.
Yeah, and they actually make some pretty large storage hydration vests. Like you can even get like a 15-liter hydration vest that you're going to be able to figure out how to fit most of your stuff from your backpack in there. Like if you're doing day hikes, like obviously overnight's a different story, but yeah, day hikes it is very individual. Like you'll have to find one that you like. No one can recommend one to you. But check them out. I mean, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to play around and see what fits. Like, and yeah, the specialty stores will all have them for sure.
I remember feeling kind of self-conscious too, like the first time I went out, because you kind of look like a scuba diver, right? Like you got this pack on with like a hose, and so that's something I tell new runners too all the time. Like, you're probably going to feel a little self-conscious, but try not to worry about it. You know, you'll find your group of people where you're all scuba divers together running on the trail. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Anybody else? Awesome. Kim, thank you. This is the most fun I've had on this.
Right.
Thank you so
That was
much.
a blast.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Dan.
you guys. Thank you everybody for hanging out with us.
with you.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. I mean,
Yeah.
trail running's fun to talk
And
about.
I get, oh yeah. Okay, we'll do this here. And then we'll do this with the things in the background. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Thank you. It's really glad we got to meet you.
Oh my God, it was
Yeah.
so great.
It's fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Hi, what's up?
Nice smiles.
Hi, Miles.
Right.
It was fun.
Was this your song or did he?
This is mine,
Oh, what
actually.
was I?
It was so
Of
good.
course,
I got
it
the
is
live
YouTube.
stream. It was doing